Hey guys, Reese here at Rooting Ridge Farms. Today we're talking about barley fodder and feeding it to rabbits and its nutrient profile and kind of the very basics of how we start it and what we're doing with it. And so come learn with us. So I'm in here filling water buckets to take out and fill out of the for the rabbits, but just wanted to show off something new that we're doing. I'm not doing a lot of it. This is my only tray. This is called fodder. It's just barley that we get from our feed mill. Barley is primarily what we feed our hogs as far as grain, but I pipe a little off of the top of my husband's buckets when he brings them in, and I bring it in and I soak it and start a little tray of it. It's point of sprouting grain is it increases the nutrient profile. I should say it makes it more bioavailable. So a seed has unlocked potential. A seed, I forget the exact digestibility, but it's got a significant portion of its nutrients that because of phytic acid and other things that are the seed's protection mechanism, it makes it not totally digestible. That's why many seeds can pass through the digestive tract of animals like deer and birds and things like that and still come out the other side and germinate. And so just nature's way of preserving seeds so that more stuff can be reseeded by nature's reseeders. But when you soak it and you sprout it, that the soaking process actually causes the phytic acid to ferment and break down. And it's phytase is the enzyme that is also in it that is basically activated under warm, humid conditions. And so that's why you can store seeds in a dry place and they will last for a long time and absolutely still be plantable. But that's why if your seeds get wet, you know, for like your garden or whatever, you're going to lose germination rate. It's because they've started to degrade because of the phytase in them. I need to turn off my water for a second. But for that reason, the process of soaking and sprouting grain releases that phytase, which breaks down the phytic acid, and then you get the sprout. And so the whole combination, what nutrients are left in the seed, as well as what's in this prime first growth of the seed, is extremely nutrient dense, more nutrient dense than seeds itself is. And so barley has a protein level, typically, I think it's about 14%. Some literature says 13. Some even says lower than that. But all the scientific literature and stuff that I see for sprouting barley and feeding it as fodder actually increases the protein level up to about 16%, sometimes 17%. And so it's not, as far as I know, it's not actually increasing the protein level, but what it is it's making the protein that's already there more bioavailable, so it feeds like a 17%. So for our rabbits, I'm not trying to go primarily to it. In theory, I would like to. It would cut down on costs. 50 pounds of barley seed will make about 300 pounds of fodder. But at the same time, I like the convenience of pellets. And, you know, should we ever need to go out of town or go on vacation or anything like that, managing a fodder-only system is a lot. And getting a farm helper or farm sitter to do that whole process and not have mold and to teach them the whole thing would just be a lot. So I like to diversify, though, so that I've got as many potentials as possible. So basically it sprouts and it grows these little air roots, and then as each day goes by, then you start to see the stem come out and stuff. But rabbits obviously have very delicate digestive systems. It's very easy to kill them with bloat. And so this is something that you introduce very, very slowly. I'll show you some that I've clipped over here. The general recommendation is for one adult rabbit, about a 1-inch square piece in the beginning. This is a little more than 1 inch. I'd say that's probably about almost 2-inch by 1 inch. So I'll probably clip this in half again. But because I've just been starting to use it and actually use it with my animals, I haven't gotten very far into this tray yet. I have dabbled in fodder for the pigs and the chickens before, but this is the first time that I've been using it with rabbits. So very delicate digestive systems. It's easy to kill them. So you don't want to introduce this too fast, especially since it's such a high moisture content. Fiber is created the longer that the plant is alive. So when you think of hay or barley straw, that is basically nothing but cellulose and fiber. Whereas this is just, reminds me of chives. Like it's very bruisable, very breakable. It's not high fiber at all. So the primary content besides the nutrients itself is going to be water, which makes it more prone to bloat. So when you switch your rabbits to any new feed, you want to make sure and introduce them slowly to anything. Which is part of why I want to feed them some of this, even if I'm never going to go full fodder. Some of this at any given time, as well as the pellets, just to kind of keep their bacteria in their digestive tract trained for both sources, so that they can utilize anything. So that if given the need to, we could switch them over onto grass more easily if pellets became hard to source or hard to find. We could, feed hay and grass and put them out in tractors or whatever, not immediately kill them all, because they have been kind of continually kept in balance with bacteria that are able to digest some high moisture, grassy sort of content. So it's just a kind of backup plan that I have. Sometimes the pellets are hard to find, and other times grass is hard to find, like in the middle of January at 33 degrees out right now. There is more dangers with pasturing your rabbits. You're more prone to pick up a lot of parasites and diseases like that, but the fodder is a nice middle ground. It brings your grocery bill down, or your pellet feed down. We can get 100 pounds of barley for about $16 right now. I think it went up a little bit more. It's gone up a couple times, of course, since COVID started. But we can get 100 pounds of that, which would make 600 pounds of fodder for $16 versus my complete nutrition. Don't have to worry about any deficiencies or anything. Rabbit pellet, right now I'm paying $16 for 50 pounds. So even if I were to just feed barley straight to my rabbits, which I would never do, but even if I were, just the seed itself, not fermented, not sprouted, nothing, if I were to do that, I'd have the savings of, by half. So 100 pounds, that's 16 cents a pound, versus 50 pounds at $16, that's 32 cents a pound. So that translates obviously into less cost per pound to get a rabbit to butchering size. But the problem with feeding straight grain is it's high in carbohydrates, and rabbits generally do not do well with straight carbohydrates. They are absolutely herbivores. And the straight carbohydrates tend to cause, especially female rabbits, to put too much internal fat on them. And when they get too much internal fat, then they become infertile and unable to breed. So I would never, except under the most direst of circumstances, ever even consider feeding just straight grain to my rabbits, which is why, you can ferment it and sprout it and destroy that phytic acid and cause it to grow into sprouts. And it is no longer straight carbohydrates. That phytic acid, it's the same reason why beer makes beer when you ferment grain and stuff, is because the fermentation is feeding on the sugars, which are carbs, in the grain, and then that byproduct produces, of course, alcohol in the case of beer. But in this case, we're not reserving any fluid that's left behind by this. Technically, would be I believe malt, but we're not reserving any of that fluid. It gets drained right out the bottom of my tray. I actually have a 2-tray system. I really like this system. These are just trays. Pardon my coffee grounds in the bottom of the plate. These are just trays that I bought my salad in at Walmart. It's not the Walmart brand because those trays were really flimsy, but it's a locally produced brand for us. It's probably about 7 inches by 11 inches. And it's got a good amount. You don't put a lot of grain in the bottom. You really only put about that much grain in the bottom. I don't put it in that one. I put it in this one. Because one of the things with fodder, I'm going to try to flip this over one-handed. You see I've drilled holes, actually melted holes in the bottom of this one. One of the things with fodder that's a big risk is mold. And you don't want to feed moldy feed to animals. You can actually see I've got some mold started right there. And that's partly because this fodder is about a day past prime. So it's just been sitting in the house. I kind of forgot about it and forgot to keep rinsing it and stuff. But when I'm soaking, what I like to do is I will actually put this one down inside of that one and fill it up so that my seeds are floating. And I'll just let it soak. And then when I want to drain it, what I'll do is I'll dump out the water in the bottom tray and then let it drip. And because that's on an angle then, sitting in that, it drips down in, and that helps to keep the moisture not sitting against the seed. And every time you have sugars and carbohydrates sitting in water, you're just begging for mold and yeast and fermentation, the bad sort of fermentation to start. So starts like this, except it's just grain. When you first rinse it the first few times, you want to be really gentle so you don't wind up with all the seeds on one end of it. Of course, we're be rinsing it flat on the surface like this, but it wants to float. But then as the air roots start to develop, then what starts to happen is it kind of mats itself in place, and you don't have to worry about it floating around so much. So that's my mini rundown. That's my TED Talk on fodder. My kids just love playing with it. It's very sensory, kind of fun. It's like having one of those chia pets in your house. But we'll go out to the rabbits here in a minute with our waters, and I'll show you them eating their little bit of fodder treats. All right, so I'm out here at the rabbitry. It's a brisk day in zone 6. We got Luna, Samantha over here. Sorry for my panting. I just carried 2 5-gallon buckets of water out here. So back to the fodder. I brought out about a 4-inch piece. Broke it up into some 1-inch chunks because, like I said, still been introducing it. Over here we have Luna. The sweet mama just kindled this morning sometime. She's only had this once so far, but you can see it is chow town when the fodder shows up. Like any animal, I mean, who doesn't love fresh food? So I really like the barley. I've been giving barley fodder to all the new moms. It really seems like their milk comes in faster, and they're having porker babies that just really seem like they gain better. So she's munching that. It works, it works. While we're in here, we'll go ahead and she's having her treat. We'll check these kits because I don't know how many she had yet. She always throws a lot of fur down, which I love her for. I don't have to worry about these babies being cold. They are balmy, toasty, warm in here right now. So, Annie, can you move your nose, please? My German Shepherd loves the babies. She's never tried to hurt one. She'll lick them sometimes, but she does that with our kittens too. She's just, I think, overly friendly. Okay, babies, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3. So here's my babies. I counted them into my hat. It's just my preferred way for pulling them out in the cold weather. Keeps them warm for a minute, but they're 7. So 7 babies. Some broken blacks and a couple of steels, which is what our New Zealand buck seems to always throw, which tells us he's probably a steel himself underneath. So there they are. We're going to cover them back up. They're nice and toasty fur mass, so they don't get chilled. I am amazed at the thermal properties of rabbit wool. I never, ever, ever knew rabbit fur could be so dang warm. So she had 7. Last time she had 11 and lost 1. I'm okay with 7 because even 10 is such a large litter. It's hard to keep condition and feed them all. So they're in there.